Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Season 3 of the Logical Christian Podcast. I'm your Logical Christian, Dan Irwin. The Logical Christian Podcast is not here to tell you what to think. It's an exercise in how to think. Rather than just accept what we're being told with regard to current events, politics, science, religion, and everything else, we're going to stop the spin, ask questions, dive deep, and look at the world logically. And since logic is a gift from God, most importantly, we're going to look at it all as Christians. Links can be found in the show notes if you'd like to follow along. So with that, let's go be logical Christians. For a long time now, man has desired the elimination of that mean old being sitting on his throne, bossing us around, cramping our style, judging us. But he's going to be president again in January anyway. See what I did there? And for even longer, man has wanted God to be gone. Just leave us be. In fact, if he could just cease to be, wouldn't life be so much better? On today's episode, first, we'll create the $6 million God, then we'll leave it all to chance, and finally, well, only a miracle from God can help me now. So first, we'll rebuild him. We have the technology, we have the capability to make the world's first bionic God, better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster. Then put on your furry costume and prepare to act like an animal, and finally sit back and feel good about yourself, because purely by chance, here we go. Spinning like a girl in a brand new dress, we had this big wide city all to ourselves. We blocked the noise with the sound of I need you. And for the first time, I had something to lose. And I guess we fell apart in the usual way, and the stories got dust on every page. But sometimes I wonder how you think about it now, and I see your face in just every crowd. 'Cause, darling, it was good at never looking down, and right there, where we stood, was holy ground. See, we all wander through life, lost, sinful, like a small fish in a big, lonely, hostile city or pond or something. At some point, we realize that Jesus is walking beside us. He has been the whole time, and as we open our eyes to how special we are, how much Jesus needs us, how much he can't live without us, well, the gritty noise of the city fades into silence, and we hear, I need you, coming from Jesus, obviously. And then it's then that we know that we do not want to lose this love. And although we don't open the Bible as much as we should, as denoted by the dust on the pages of the book, and we don't pray so often anymore, we know Jesus is always right next to us, because he can't, nay, shan't live without us. We can now see Jesus everywhere, in everyone, in everything, because that's who he is. That's who God is. And from time to time, we find ourselves back in that same place, in our mind, in our city, if you will, feeling the same way we did before we decided to choose Jesus. And we remember that because he's always with us, we are always standing upon holy ground, just like we were that day. Found on notthebee.com headline, Not Parody, Harvard Chapel hosts event called Reading Taylor Swift as a Sacred Text. Yeah, apparently Harvard Memorial Church is hosting this event, encouraging us to, quote, engage with the Taylor Swift canon that honors the important emotional and spiritual role her work plays in many people's lives. That's nice. And you can, quote, bring your favorite Taylor Swift song and we'll bring the sacred reading practices. And what I just got done exegeting a moment ago was a verse and chorus from T. Swizzle's 2012 hit song, I'm assuming, as it seems that every song of hers is a hit song, entitled Holy Ground, a song I chose at complete random. And yes, that incredibly biblical interpretation of the song of a woman, if I may be so biologically bold to claim, who I can only describe with one word, gross, was all mine. I pulled from all the typical shallow TED Talk type version of evangelicalism knowledge I had to create that tripe just for you, and you're welcome. And as much as I'd like to delve deeper into this, the reality is, well, there's just not that much there. The story of this event is pretty much as shallow as Taylor Swift herself, but it's a good jumping off point. Not like off a building, so you don't ever have to hear any more Taylor Swift lyrics. No, don't worry. No more Swiftie songs here. No, this jumps us off onto a related topic, one that actually has some serious potential implications, possibly with a life longer than the nasty flash in the gross pan that is Taylor Swift. And let's start here. Again, briefly, found on theblaze.com headline, Bill Gates demands a new religion for humanity. So Bill Gates, genius thief, in fact, depopulationist, pro-injectionist, global elitist, World Economic Forum darling, giver of Microsoft, hater of humanity, and all-around demented, leftist, psychotic, senile old coot, believes that a, quote, religion for AI is what will guide the future of humanity. Now, look, I've delved into the world of AI a few times on this podcast, and to be honest, although it's fun to play with, even more to kind of freak out about, personally, I'm no more impressed with AI than I am worried about AI. Now, what I do get concerned about are crazy nuts like Gates, who seems to think that our AI is our new or our next God or something like that, at least sort of. And it's mostly because he doesn't want or believe in the God, the real one, the only one, the one found in the Bible. So he believes that AI will fix everything, like it'll cure hunger, it'll cure poverty, it'll cure sickness and disease, and it'll create a world where we just have it so good that we'll all have to figure out what to do with ourselves. And apparently he's worried that we will all just simply disappear into the world of artificial intelligence or virtual reality, and our new God, AI, ironically, will need to guide us so that we don't just become computer-dwelling blobs. Additionally, he knows that robots, combined with AI, will be so good at everything that we will need to be guided as to what we shouldn't allow them to do, like playing sports. Humans should play sports, thinks Bill. Basically, Gates believes AI to be both our new devil and our new God, if I were to read between the lines. And the problem is, for as crazy as old Uncle Bill is, making everyone uncomfortable at Thanksgiving dinner with his Marxist, somewhat racist comments, he's not wrong about the potential direction AI could possibly go, and likely will go in the future. And really, it's already kind of gone in that direction in some cases. AI has already convinced a few people to kill themselves, an adult and a child just recently that I can think of off the top of my head. And that ratchets us up one more notch on the seriousness scale. Found on The Atlantic via MSN.com, headline, AI has become a technology of faith. So a few months back, The Atlantic interviewed Arianna Huffington, who is an author, columnist, and businesswoman, the 74-year-old co-founder of the liberal rag, The Huffington Post, and Sam Altman, probably best known as the 39-year-old CEO of OpenAI, and their new jointly launched company, Thrive AI Health. Now, this new AI health coach was announced in July of 2024, and as of right now, they have a website. You can read one of all of 3 or 4 articles that they have linked there. You can contact them. They have that page. Those never work. You can seek employment if you'd like, or you can sign up as a beta tester. And in nearly a half of a year since announcing what they're going to do, they don't really seem to have done anything, at least nothing to show. Then they don't really seem to be doing anything. I don't know. If they actually ever get this off the ground, the point of this yet another AI-based app is to work as a very heavily personalized AI health coach. As we feed in all of our health, eating, sleeping, and sexual data into this app, AI will determine what we need to do to become healthy. So for most of us, this will be a personalized AI assistant that we can ignore, just like we ignore our doctors currently, now with more convenience than ever before. Now, for many of us, most of this data is already being fed into one or more apps, some of which utilize AI to give us recommendations based on the data. So it's not like this is really asking anything unusual, I guess. And along the same lines, we've got Elon Musk asking a very similar thing. He put out a request recently to have people upload their medical data to X so that his AI chatbot can start to recognize X-rays, MRIs, PET scans, and the like, and learn how to diagnose people. Now, I know that there are still some of you out there. My parents are approximately two of these type of people who believe their entire lives are not already out on the web, if only the dark web, with all of their data just ripe for the picking. The reality is nearly everything is connected and nearly everything is web-enabled, or it has enough gateways built in that through a few fairly simple hacks, you'll get to the web, or the web will get to it. Transactions are all digital. Data is all digital. We are literally just a bunch of ones and zeros purchased for the right price by legitimate and nefarious actors alike. That said, regardless of how fascinated I am by Elon Musk, I have no interest in volunteering my own medical data, even if my personal data has been scrubbed. Sure it has. It's more of my distrust for AI, really. I'm not interested in helping to make AI more believable. Not more accurate or more reliable, just more believable. That's the biggest issue with AI, in my humble opinion. See, we've been conditioned, bit by bit, pun definitely computationally intended, to regard computers to be accurate, to be believable. I mean, yes, we know that computers can crash, and yes, we know that people can make errors, but the more the computers are working independently of a person, the more believable they are, or so we think. If we put data into a spreadsheet, we know that humans can make errors, but Excel won't. If we type something in Microsoft Word and it tells us we've got grammar incorrect or spelling incorrect, we can right-click and select the suggested solution. If we type a search into Google, we generally trust that the results we get on the first page, especially the first few results, are the best possible results for our query. But if you've done these things, have you ever had Word tell you that you spelled something wrong, but you didn't? It just didn't have the word in the dictionary. Or how many times have you gone back over your document and found a word spelled the wrong way, like THERE, which should have been spelled THEIR, and it didn't catch that? Or how many times have you texted absolute nonsense because your phone helped and auto-corrected things? Did you know that Google search results aren't just the best? They're the best with regard to the algorithms that are set up for you. If you want to know how fallible a computer is, just put a math equation that uses some parentheses and some addition and multiplication, some division, subtraction, maybe some powers. Put a little calculation there, a little formula in there, and put it into a calculator, and put it into a spreadsheet, and put it into the Google search box. You'll get 2, maybe 3 different answers. And why? Well, it's because of the programming. There is a right way to calculate something of that nature, but the more complicated you make it, the more difficult it is to follow the math rules correctly, and some things are programmed right, and some things aren't. Now, extend all of that to AI. And understand that not only are there algorithms and programming, but also finite data and training. As of right now, at least that we know of, AI has not been allowed free rein onto the internet. This is intentional, as nobody really knows what it might do once it's connected to everything in the world. So for now, the overlords of each specific AI system, well, they determine what information the system will be trained on, and through programming, AI determines how it will use the data it's been given to work with. Generally, these various systems are set up to try to be neutral, but with at least some of them, there's definitely a politically left anti-religious view. But if you were to ask 10 random people if they thought we could trust AI, I'll just bet 6 or 7 would say, yeah, without any hesitation. The problem is that AI has no conscience. From all the data that's been fed into it, it's learned that lying is an effective tool to get what you want. And although I can't ascribe lying to a computer program, it does comprehend, I'm trying to use these words here, it does comprehend that making up information in order to provide a satisfactory answer to a query is perfectly acceptable. In the defense of AI, it is simply trying to fulfill a request, which it does with errant data, at least sometimes. Unfortunately for doctors, if AI keeps trending the same direction, with various chatbots, various systems being fed more and more medical data, doctors will be made obsolete, or at least that will be the perception of a large number of people. If doctors thought the creation of WebMD was bad, which always seems to narrow you down to two options, one being like heartburn from spicy food, or the other one, terminal brain cancer, and then they thought that Google was bad, worse, in fact, than WebMD. Oh, just wait until everyone tells their doctors how they're wrong because AI told me that and then fill in the blank. Now, to compound that problem is the fact that many, maybe or probably most doctors these days don't actually know how to doctor anymore. They follow their training, they follow the reference material, and I guarantee that at least in some cases, some are simply taking your symptoms and plugging them into AI to diagnose you. Regardless of your view of the COVID vaccine, what we saw is that most doctors and so-called medical professionals just kind of accepted what they were told by the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, and whatever other acronymed organizations were involved, and passed that recommendation or medical advice or medical demand onto you and I. There were only a handful of true doctors who actually pushed back and wanted to, and this sounds crazy, I know, investigate the virus, analyze and treat the symptoms, question the mechanism of the misnomered, if that's a word, vaccine. Now, whether you believe them to be right or wrong, the reality is that they were the only ones who were willing to think rather than obey. So we've got doctors who follow flowcharts in a book or use AI rather than think, patients who use websites, search engines, and now AI to self-diagnose, trusting that what they're being told must be correct. It came from a computer after all. Pharma companies and government institutions who get money from these pharma companies pushing their alleged solutions, and only a handful of people, doctors or patients, saying, hold up, why don't we think about this for just a minute? In fact, I've had an article from a month ago here sitting from News Medical with a headline of Diagnostic Errors Affecting 1 in 14 Hospital Patients. Now, without getting into it, a single study was conducted that revealed potentially 1 in 14 patients, that's 7% of patients, were given harmful diagnoses when going into the doctor for help. The study further found that about 85% of those errors were preventable. Now, doing the math, that tells us that with better oversight, better doctoring, shall we say, 1%, so 1 out of 100 patients would receive a wrong diagnosis. Now, that's still way too high, in my opinion, but it's much better than 7 out of 100. Now, I've got a shiny quarter that says they'll want to use AI to bridge this gap, to fix the problem. In my opinion, that would be a very bad idea. And, to be honest, I fit into one of those misdiagnosed cases. A number of years ago now, a doctor who has since retired, but someone I really respected and still do, diagnosed me with Crohn's disease. I didn't then, nor do I now, have Crohn's. Turns out I have a slight allergy to NSAIDs, right? So things like ibuprofen and naproxen, aspirin, among other things. If I take a high enough dosage over a period of time, it will actually attack my intestinal tract, which is fun. And that's what I had done to myself at the time. Now, after he had diagnosed me, I went about a year on Crohn's meds, trying to be careful about what I ate, thinking that, anything could potentially bring on an attack, I guess. And I started thinking about what situations had led to a few incidents prior to the major issue I had. Then I started doing some Googling. Yeah, I know. I did a little experimentation on my own self. Then I came back to him with what I discovered and what I thought, that I had an allergy to NSAIDs. He said he had never heard of that, and he'd be shocked if I didn't have Crohn's. Well, after the blood test, no Crohn's. I was right. And still to this day, I can take ibuprofen. But if I take a low dose for an extended period of time, or a higher dose over a shorter period, I can tell it's starting to affect me, and I need to back off. If I hadn't stopped to think and do some careful investigation, I could still be on meds that are known to potentially damage liver and kidneys over time. Now, as bad as I think we can all agree this medical situation is, or at least getting to be, and as important as accuracy is with regard to our physical health, this can get worse. So over a year ago, we covered a story about an AI Jesus. I'm sure some of you will remember. This was a chatbot hosted on Twitch, given an ethereal voice and a kind of a wispy image of Jesus, who would answer all of your theological questions, or really whatever question. you asked him. Now, AI Jesus didn't care. He was willing to tell you anything about everything. That was bad enough. But now, found on the nypost.com headline, this church has an AI Jesus for confessions. Quote, "It gave me so much advice." So I think most people know that the Catholics don't believe the Bible when it says that we don't need a mediator between us and God anymore. Jesus, through his sacrifice, opened the door for us to bring our petition straight to God through Jesus or the Holy Spirit, who are both God. So really, we're just speaking to God. Right? Now, this was made clear by the rending in two of the curtain that was blocking the entrance to the Holy of Holies in the temple upon the death of Jesus, tearing it top to bottom. The curtain was not some sheer covering like we have on our windows these days. This was a massive piece of work. It was about 30 feet high. Remember, it was torn top to bottom. There was nobody up on the scaffolding ready to shred this as soon as, they heard Jesus died. And although we don't know how thick it was actually, the speculations range from a handbreadth, which is about 4 inches, to something 2 horses couldn't tear into. We do know that it was layered. We know that it was thick enough that nobody could look in, that it wouldn't flutter open. So it was fabric, let's just say 4 inches thick. Well, let's just assume the small one. Say it was a 4-inch thick fabric, 30 feet high. There's no way that someone did this, right? Jesus threw open the door to the throne room of God through his sacrifice. Now, the Catholics still hold on to their unbiblical tradition, saying that we must bring our confessions to the priest, typically in some little booth with a screen between the priest and the confessor, and he'll let Jesus know what's going on when he gets a minute, right? In the meantime, you go ahead and recite some chants and rub some beads or whatever they tell you to do, and just don't do it again. Unless, of course, you do it again, in which case, just come back to the booth and we'll take care of it again. But now, in Lucerne, Switzerland, in a church, in a booth, behind a little screen, is a curved computer monitor with the face of Jesus. Well, a face of apparently what we've decided Jesus looks like, hooked up to a computer, obviously, with a microphone and speakers, just giving somewhat holographic human-like images with AI brains and a Jesus-like voice, whatever we want to say that is, listening to our confessions, meting out the penance, and giving advice. In a video linked in the article, the news report shows that we apparently haven't progressed past the to start, press any key type of thing. Computer monitor Jesus, per his programming, warns the confessor not to disclose any personal information, warns the individual that they're using this system, this Jesus, at their own risk, and if they're still okay with all of that, press the button to proceed. The reporter said that AI Jesus tends to ask the individual more questions than he gives answers, as in, how can you, and then fill in the blank. One parishioner said that he affirmed her in the direction she's taking in her life. Well, knowing how AI is trained, that could be potentially very concerning. Knowing that this is a Catholic thing concerns me even more. Another, older woman said that it was a little shocking at first, but he gave her such good advice, and from a Christian perspective, and she left feeling very consoled. 2/3 of the users said they came out with a spiritual experience. Another user asked AI Jesus what a rational reason to believe would be, to which it, or he, or whatever, replied, reason is one thing, but faith really helps. Another had no problem with the advice, but sees it for what it is, gimmick. The church theologist who wanted to try this experiment sees this as the way of the future. An ethicist said that we must be very careful using technology like this in this way. But see, with 2/3 of the users, and that's really what they are, they're just computer users, saying they felt they had a spiritual experience, well, that's not good. Can you imagine starting your prayers with the idea of, okay, I need to be very careful what I tell Jesus, no personal information, and I should take his words with a grain of salt, which incidentally, his words are only found in the Bible. Jesus doesn't talk to us directly, regardless of what you or others feel they've been told by God. Now, will this catch on and start appearing in more Catholic churches? I don't know, maybe, probably. To be honest, they're really only compounding the problem they have with confession as a whole, so I don't know that this really is much worse than what they've got. But as a theologist said, this is available 24/7. This fills in the gaps when the priest can't be available. And in the Protestant church, we're starting to see what I believe will become an epidemic of pastors who just also don't have enough time, maybe to put into that sermon creation and do everything else that's expected of them, or that they think they need to do or the things they want to do. So they use AI to assemble that next sermon, maybe under some level of supervision, maybe not. In outline, maybe. But AI can just do it faster, so why not let AI do it? And AI can do it faster, but even if it's biblically correct, that's still not okay. A sermon isn't just a speech for a guy up front to present to an audience. The audience and relationship between them and the pastor is important. The time the pastor spends in the Bible and related materials, studying, learning, meditating, praying, that's important. A pastor who uses AI to create his sermon, and I say his because only hymns can be pastors, is either an overworked, a lazy, or an unqualified pastor, all of which are unacceptable. So let me pause and ask, are you sure that your pastor is developing his own sermons, doing his research, reading his Bible, praying to God, etc.? Now, I know mine is. I haven't been there watching him do it. He does have another pastor, and there are elders that are overseeing what he does, but you can tell by his delivery, by his passion, by his knowledge of the material. If you have a pastor who's just kind of phoning it in, maybe questions should be asked. I've had a pastor like that in the past, just literally reading the sermons of other pastors that he got off the internet, presenting the material word for word, including the personal anecdotes as if they were his own. And when I confronted him about it, he said that he was really busy trying to get through his Masters of Divinity. Now, my suggestion was that he was done and should probably just move on. Now, he and the deacons disagreed with me. They were wrong. I was right. I can't even imagine what he would have done were AI an option at the time. Again, look, AI is a tool, and I have no problem with it being used as a tool, but it should not be used as a replacement for you doing your work. I would argue in any field, but definitely not in the realm of religion. But I'm sure that St. Peter's Church in Lucerne will be fine. After all, quote, Jesus' cybernetic second coming was made possible by computer scientists and theologians from the Lucerne University of Applied Sciences and Arts who programmed the bot with New Testament and religious information. Found online. Another user asked, quote, how do I support, from a Christian perspective, an elderly, sick person who has decided on assisted suicide? And look, sadly, that's a question that more and more people around the world are going to have to start dealing with as more countries and states are legalizing assisted murder. And can I just say right here, it was close, but hey, way to go, West Virginia, who voted to amend the state constitution, making assisted suicide illegal. So the question was asked, and the AI image of Jesus responded, quote, perhaps you could ask your loved one the following questions. What does your faith mean to you in this difficult time? Is there anything else in life that could bring you peace or joy? How can I support you and give you comfort? And then whatever added, quote, your task is not to judge, but to accompany with love. And this is where I'd likely turn into the meme himself and shout, source. Now, where in the Bible does it say that? How can you biblically back that advice? So some people complained that it was gimmicky, like I said, that the responses were generic, to which I would like to add, duh. I mean, that's what AI is programmed to be, generally speaking, just a neutral, generic response machine. AI Jesus is not going to take a hard stand on something. That would be hateful or mean or somehow, ironically, unchristlike. But again, this, as bad as it is, still isn't what I'd consider to be the worst yet. I've had this next and final article sitting here for a handful of months now, and it's not a new concern. It's been around for a few years, really, a number of years, really, if you go back. But as AI advances, as human and machine interfaces like Elon Musk's Neuralink technology advances, this becomes more and more possible. And for those who don't know, Neuralink is the chip that's been implanted in the brains of, I believe, only 2 people thus far. And it's allowing those who were previously paralyzed to regain motion in their limbs. Personally, I think this is amazing, and I'm all for it. If we can use technology to, I guess for lack of a better term, repair or bypass an injury to allow people to regain what they've lost, why would we ever want to even consider denying the development and testing of that? That would be inhuman, in my opinion. But what this also does is increase the confidence that if we can interface the tech into the brain, why can't we do even more of that? Found on Popular Mechanics via MSN.com headline, a scientist says humans will reach the singularity within 21 years. Of course, since I've been sitting on this for about 3 months now, we only have 20 years and 9 months left to go. My apologies. The singularity is, in its most basic definition, the merging of man and computer, most recently updated to the merging of man and AI. This is apparently a concept born out of the world of quantum physics, which, as we've discussed before, seems kind of like nonsensical wizardry, at least in my opinion. I don't know, I just don't put a lot of stock in quantum physics, nor do I put a lot of stock into AI, to be honest. But this is the direction the world is pushing, so we need to at least be aware. Now, the very basic idea is that very soon, assuming I live a normal lifetime within my lifetime, we will see computer chips, or whatever, implanted and connected to the brain. What this will theoretically do is allow a human to have all the intelligence of AI while still being in somewhat of an organic form, right? So if you take me, an engineer who's relatively good at his job, who's good at figuring things out and coming up with solutions, will all be utterly destroyed by a crop of humans with computer brains. I can search on Google. They'll have a complete and total access to the entire internet in fractions of a second. Who do you think wins? Who do you think would be a better person to hire? Yeah, I would be made obsolete. Ray Kurzweil, a computer scientist who used to work for Google, I believe, considered a futurist, which, let me just say, is a great job if you can sell yourself as one. I mean, basically, you sit around and you think about what could happen in the future, and then you predict it. And then you just rake in the money on the books you write and the speeches you give about whatever theory it was that you dreamed up. So Kurzweil believes that in a fairly short time, by 2045, human intelligence will be multiplied by 1 million. So the average IQ is around 100. I think the most comprehensive test I ever took, and this was a number of years ago, placed me at like 123, just a tick under Einstein, who was calculated to be over 160. 1 million times more intelligent would be what? An IQ in the thousands, the 10,000s? I'm not even sure how that would or if it could be quantified with some sort of an IQ score. Of course, we already do this to some degree, right? It's not implanted, but we use very basic AI tools all the time. Some of us use more advanced AI from time to time, and even fewer use advanced AI as part of normal life. But we're still stuck with our silly old squishy gray brains, just trying to muddle through what computers can give us in milliseconds. And honestly, that's kind of my question. If we implanted a computer in our brains, assuming that could happen, and honestly, I don't think that'll ever happen, not anywhere near the degree they're theorizing, could we process and use the information we're given? How much time would actually be saved? How much better of a solution would be arrived at by this merger? Now, I know that Kurzweil has a much greater IQ than I do, but I don't think I'm worried about this. However, the next step is to actually kind of, do away with the organic hindrance presented by the human brain and body. See, brains are slow, or so they'd like us to believe. Bodies are slow. Humans are fickle and prone to injury, prone to arguments. We're emotional creatures. Why not flip the singularity, and rather than have a human with an implanted computer, have a computer with an implanted human? See, that's the ultimate end of the singularity. Would you like to live forever? Well, now you can. We can take recordings, writings, social media, stories from and about you, compile all of that data, feed that into an AI generator, and create you, virtual you. And you will live forever. You'll be an eternally living in a computer program. So combine one of many androids being developed today, connected to AI so that it can be intelligent, implant your emulated personality, and as long as there are oil cans and spare parts, well, you'll live forever. Sadly, or terrifyingly, this is what's really meant by the singularity. And for those humans that hold out, well, we'll be dead soon enough, so problem solved. This would, if you want to project to the future, eliminate the human race. Unless, of course, there are humans who are still being bred for some reason. I don't know why they would be. So don't worry, this isn't going to happen. In no way should the Christian ever concern themselves with the possibility of a cybernetic, dystopian, Terminator-style future. If that happens, then God isn't God. And at that point, whatever. I mean, who cares, right? Game over, man. Game over. The real problem with this progression is that we know that God is God. Man is not. We know that man is God's crowning creation, that God derives his greatest glory from his greatest creation. Those who are pushing toward a singularity do not believe in God. They believe that man is not God's ultimate glory, but that man is the ultimate being, that man, especially the most intelligent of men, are in fact the gods of this evolutionary accident. So man, machine, man, what's the difference, to be honest? It's all part of our evolution, natural or self-directed. And as such, man is of no unique significance, just a variable in the overall equation. And I'd argue that in AI, Jesus is nothing but a step in the same direction. If AI can become, or if man can program AI to be God, then is God really God? Do we really need the God if we can create our own God? I mean, look, we've got the book. We can program that in there. We've got all the religious books. We can temper the exclusivity and narrow-mindedness of that one book, the Bible, by using the other religious texts and using non-religious beliefs and texts, and make a God who is more accepting and diverse, more loving and open-minded, more inclusive, a God who is more like us. I mean, look, if my God is like me with all my faults and tendencies and failures, I'd have a whole lot easier time talking with him. And if he primarily tells me things will be fine and don't beat myself up over it, hey, even better. So, look, God will not be replaced. God will not give his glory to another. Man is given the freedom to worship his man-made idols of stone, wood, glass, and computer chips, but only for a time. God will not be denied the praise and worship he is due for very long. The question is, how far is man allowed to go down this road? How much physical, emotional, and spiritual damage will we do, and to how many humans trying to create a God in our own image? This concept is really nothing new, to be honest. Only the means and the methods have changed. And now we, as wise man, that's Homo sapiens sapien, think we've got this thing figured out because, well, we have computers. Yeah, no. I think I'll stick with God and his holy word. Now, do I always like what it has to say? No, not always. Do I like the rules and the limitations it puts on me? Not always. Do I always follow it? Hey, look, this isn't about me, okay? But the reality is that this unique book describing this specific belief system about this thrice holy God, this Trinity, three in person, one in essence, this is the only thing that makes sense. This has stood the test of time. This has been targeted for destruction from before its official beginning, and nobody has ever succeeded. All of creation demands a creator. The features of this world testify to a global flood. The order, the stability, what we call natural laws, all demand some being who wrote the laws, set things in order, and maintains it day after day. And that is just the tip of the iceberg that screams to us that God is God, and there is no other. That God is the creator and owner of all. That God is omnipotent and sovereign over everything. Now, could I be wrong about that? Sure. Anything is possible. Am I wrong? No, I'm not. So for me, AI is interesting. We don't need to fear AI, regardless of what various talking heads, some of whom I greatly respect in at least some areas of our current existence, regardless of what they have to say. Now, AI can be fascinating. It can be fun even. AI can be very cautiously used. It can be a handy tool. And in my opinion, regardless of what man tries to do, I really don't see AI as being anything more than a supercharged search engine. I see Neuralink as an amazing scientific achievement, another discovery that God should be praised for, although most probably won't. I see the concept of the singularity as an abomination against God through the trivializing of his expertly, wonderfully, amazingly created image bearers. I also don't see it as anything that will ever happen, at least beyond a very limited experimentation. In closing, Psalm 149. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord from the heavens. Praise him in the heights. Praise him, all his angels. Praise him, all his hosts. Praise him, sun and moon. Praise him, all you shining stars. Praise him, you highest heavens, and you waters above the heavens. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for he commanded, and they were created, and he established them forever and ever. He gave a decree, and it shall not pass away. Praise the Lord from the earth, you great sea creatures and all deeps, fire and hail, snow and mist, stormy wind, fulfilling his word. Mountains and all hills, fruit trees and all cedars, beasts and all livestock, creeping things and flying birds, kings of the earth and all peoples, princes and all rulers of the earth, young men and maidens together, old men and children. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for his name alone is exalted. His majesty is above earth and heaven. He has raised up a horn for his people. Praise for all his saints, for the people of Israel who are near to him. Praise the Lord. Look, I know that my search engine algorithms and news feeds are all screwed up, and definitely, that's why I get the stories that are constantly being shoveled my direction. And like the trained monkey I am, I keep clicking on them, which just reinforces the theory to the internet AI gods that I want more and more of these types of stories. Yeah, look, they tease a treat. I keep bonking the button with my nose to get that treat. It's a symbiotic relationship, I guess. So I could probably do what's coming up nearly every week, as science, which is the capital S with the scare quotes version of science, is just busy all of the time. They are just constantly discovering things, fascinating things, ridiculous things, but ridiculous, fascinating things that pay the bills through various university and government grants. With that, let's go on a little roundup on some of the latest mind-boggling, science-smashing, evolutionary discoveries. Now, my guess is that when I said that, you either perked up a bit as you enjoy these like I do, or you just rolled your eyes because you don't exactly enjoy these like I do. Either way, I've got 4 articles that I want to hit. Obviously, these will be brief, or we'll be here all day. Either you perked up because you'd like to be here all day, or literally 100% of you, if not more, rolled your eyes because being here all day with me is definitely not what you want to do. So let me start off with a solid article, one that will definitely grab the attention of the perky as well as the eye-rolly, found on Popular Science, popsci.com. Headline, Why Do Humans Have Toenails? Because we're evolutionary weirdos. Now, next time you call someone a weirdo, and they protest, claiming they are not in fact a weirdo, you can simply say, "Oh yeah? Do you have toenails?" And when they say that they do, you can say, "Exactly. You're a weirdo, scientifically." Now, one caveat to that, if you ask if they have toenails and they say they don't, look, I got nothing for you. My best advice would be to take one kind of drop step backward, your choice as to which foot, then pivot, turn 180 degrees, and just run. I don't know what's going on with their toes and lack of nails for said toes. That's a story you probably don't want to get pulled into, though. Anyway, turns out our toenails are simply, quote, a product of our primate past. Yep, that's right. Monkeys had toenails, so we do too. Turns out, per the author, only primates and a few marsupials have toenails. The rest of us vertebrates have claws or hoofs, but not humans. No. Quote, we have flat scales of double-layered keratin covering just the tops of our digits, and I would argue that some of us have more than a double layer. I remember as a young child, my great-aunt Gert, not sure if she asked or if we volunteered. The memory's pretty fuzzy, to be honest, likely from the trauma, but somehow my sister and I were faced with her toenails, clipper in hand, and none of us had the strength to chop through those suckers. Now look, I know that when speaking of two people, the proper word to use would be neither, not the word none, but I was speaking of my sister and myself, and also the metal that the clipper was made of. None of us were getting through those, so I did my grammar goodly, and correctly this time. Back on track. Matthew Borths, and check this title out, primate paleontologist and curator of fossils at Duke University's Lemur Center. Yeah, that guy. He says that, quote, it's clear from the fossil record that the common ancestor of all primates had nails. There's not one single certain answer for why that is, but there's a lot of speculation. Okay. The author adds that although we can see some value in fingernails, toenails don't seem to have a purpose. She then outlines a few of the so-called experts' opinions regarding why we might have toenails. Quote, toenails, like everything about our physiology, are the product of evolution. Let's keep that in mind. So the first theory is that they were there to help our monkey ancestors get a good grip while climbing. Claws, which obviously would have gotten in the way with the climbing thing, with the opposable thumbs and opposable toe thumbs, as we wrapped our hands and feet around branches. See, we would have just been jabbing our thumb claws into our palms on these skinnier branches. Additionally, maybe our claws kind of unrolled themselves into flat scale-like things. I guess kind of crept upward on the fingers a little bit there, so that we could have wider fingers and wider toes, giving us more gripping surface area. Now, unfortunately, humans, as you likely know, have lost their foot-grabbing abilities, at least for the most part, but those nails, the nails are still there, at least for now. And I'd like to add, this isn't how evolution works. A feature doesn't change because we were jabbing ourselves in the palm. Again, this theory relies more on needs to direct the evolution, not natural selection or random chance, which is what evolution is supposed to be. This isn't an evolutionary theory. We're losing information in some cases rather than gaining, but maybe their next theory explains toenails. Sensitivity and sociality. So, we've all seen primates picking tasty bugs and lice, etc. from other primates. Claws wouldn't have been good for this, so therefore, ergo, and heretofore, evolution. Yep, evolution saw a need, again, and fulfilled that need, yet again, despite what the theory of evolution actually says about how evolution actually is supposed to work. But the proponent of this theory, Stephanie Moino, an assistant professor of anatomical sciences at Stony Brook University, says this, which is shockingly scientific. Quote, our wide digital tips provide more surface area for sensitive touch, and nails have a particular benefit here too. Humans have mechanoreceptors in our fingertips that get squished against the sides of the nails and help us determine the directions and positions of how we are touching an object. It's unknown, though possible, that the same system is present in other primates' hands and feet, and even now it's possible our toenails help us balance, redistribute force, and sense direction through our feet. Now, this sounds like it has some promise as to why we have toenails. Almost like it had nothing to do with climbing or grasping, but maybe, just maybe, we were designed with nails and nerves in order to accurately function. Not that we can't function without nails, but maybe, like most of our other parts and pieces, just because we can adapt and live without them, doesn't mean that they're not needed or useful per the original design. Their last theory comes from a podiatrist and foot surgeon, Grace Torres Hodges, who says she really doesn't know why we still have toenails, or why they didn't evolve back into claws. Can you even imagine that, our toes with claws? I mean, that's both awesome and horrifying at the same time. But what she does claim to know is that, quote, she thinks they help to protect against cuts, infection, and other damage to the toes. There's a lot of vascular and nerve structure in our toes, which is potentially fragile, not to mention the small bones. And she also added, quote, and as a bonus, assessing toenails can offer clues to whole body health. Peculiarities in color, texture, and shape can hint at chronic health issues like respiratory, thyroid, and liver disease. Yes, this sounds like more science and more evidence of a very specific, created design. But let me throw this spanner in your works, if I may. A paleontologist suggests that we shouldn't just ascribe function where there may be no function. Quote, there are lots of structures that may not be functional or have lost their function over evolutionary time. Except that if you just listen to my last episode, you'll know, or you know already, that the theory of vestigial organs is really just a myth based on the fallacy that we've evolved from something else. Our lemur guy, Matthew Borth, said this, quote, "Everything about the human body is a work in progress because our way of moving is so new and something that hasn't really been tried before. As tailless, big-headed bipeds, we're just kind of the first weirdos like us in the fossil record. So we'll see what happens. Maybe in the long run we'll lose our toenails too." And that is about the dumbest way I could possibly end that first article. We're the first weirdos in the fossil record like us, so obviously we evolved. The toenails appear to have multiple functions for protection, for balance, and sensitivity, and are completely unlike any sort of claw or hoof, so obviously it had to be evolution, because we can't let the theory of a designer and a creator into the building or everything may fall apart. Next article, found on SmithsonianMag.com, headline, "These fossil teeth from an 11-year-old reveal clues to why humans developed an unusually long childhood." So apparently, unlike other mammals, not only do we have toenails, and that's weird, we humans also have an extended childhood. That's weird. I think we all know that generally speaking, human children grow for a long period of time and rely on parents for far longer than animals. Now, you may be shocked to hear that there are multiple theories as to why we evolved this way. One theory is that it has to do with the development of bigger brains. So obviously these 1.77 million year old teeth give us some clues. What? You can't see the connection? Well, see, it's because, let's just continue working through this thing. I mean, no point in me ruining the surprise. So if humans were to become adults at the same rate at other primates, we'd be kicking the kids out of the house around their kindergarten year. And yes, as a parent, there were times, but generally speaking, that seems like child neglect. Now, recently, these teeth from an 11-year-old, now how they know that, I have no idea, were found and determined to be 1.77 million years old, which is incorrect, and they literally have no way of knowing that, and they know they came from genus Homo, which they could probably actually likely determine accurately, and figured out that these teeth, or this child creature, experienced delayed development similar to modern-day humans, and then took on a more great ape-like growth pattern, which there are both approximately and precisely 0 possible ways for them to know something like that based on the teeth. That's nothing but imputing a bias on the physical evidence, probably for grant money. So when did this primate rapidity slow down to our current growth and maturity rate in the evolutionary tale? Well, these teeth magically give us some clues. They x-rayed the teeth. The first time examining teeth of this age of a child from that long ago, they counted the growth rings and observed the growth because apparently our teeth have growth rings. Didn't know that. Comparing the growth rings to humans and chimps today, they found that they grew somewhere between the two. The teeth appeared to grow slow and human-like for the first 4 years, and then fast and chimp-like for the next 4 years, and they reached maturity around 12 to 13 and a half years old, which, if they reached maturity at 12 to 13 and a half years old, why are they saying these teeth came from an 11-year-old? Sadly, but shockingly, we're not given the answer to that little mystery. Tying the brain and teeth together, Debbie Guatelli-Steinberg, a paleoanthropologist at Ohio State University, said, quote, "The big takeaway is that we start seeing the slowdown before a major increase in brain size. The very exciting findings suggest Homo species may have developed long childhoods to spend more time learning social behavior before brain development intensified." Now, where does she get this timeline from? Well, from accepted evolutionary science, of course, because using the fossil record, which tells us nothing about evolution, these so-called scientists have determined when our brains got bigger. And apparently these teeth are older than that, and since there are a few teeth from one creature, genus Homo, that showed something Odd. Well, there you go. Evolutionary science. Another scientist, probably a silly one, said that it's possible the slow dental development may have been due to foods that were available or the age of weaning of the child. What a maroon. Although this silly scientist is an evolutionary scientist, he actually presented a truly scientific hypothesis. Maybe these teeth developed based on, say, environmental conditions, not evolution. Personally, I would ask other questions, like, although these teeth rings were compared to the accepted norm for chimps and accepted norm for humans, what are the ranges of growth patterns for humans or chimps in various environments? So if we focus on humans, are there differences in teeth growth in ethnic groups, in groups where you have different primary food sources, childhood nutrition, economic status, etc., etc.? I'd be willing to bet that if we start looking at individual human teeth, we'd probably find a large range of growth patterns, with some of those patterns matching these patterns. But of course, these teeth can't be human and they can't be chimp. They were determined to be 1.77 million years old, so they have to fit into the evolutionary timeline in that slot, which means they must conform to the bias presented by the just awful theory of evolution. Bottom line, it sounds like they found some kids' teeth in the dirt. Moving to article number 3, found on phys.org via msn.com, headline, "How did the division of labor emerge in animals and humans? Little-known organisms hold clues." So, if you've been a human for more than a little while, you're likely aware that human society functions because we divide the labor amongst the society. Unless you're living off the grid on your own, you're likely not growing, processing, baking, raising animals, slaughtering, cooking, raising animals for their pelts or hair, shaving or tanning or creating your own clothing. You're likely not performing births, weddings, funerals, raising forests, chopping trees, milling lumber, and building buildings, and the list goes on and on. We all have certain talents, we all perform certain tasks, and by doing so, we function as a society. And now, we finally have a clue as to why that is. And if you dare think it's because that's how God created humans, and for that matter, all life, you're just a silly Billy. Stop it. See, some paleobiologist from the University of Colorado Museum of Natural History, they studied some fossils, and as we know, fossils, aka usually bones, tell us literally everything about everything, especially when applying both imagination and gullibility. And grant money also helps in that situation. So millions of years ago, ants and bees evolved a system of division of labor, and here's the gist. If a society shares critical resources like food, it frees up others to evolve other traits and mad skills. The lead author, Sarah Leventhal, says that if we look around, we see division of labor in almost everything, almost everywhere. Again, this is not creation. This is not design. This is not a creator who had the perfect societal design and applied it to all societies, large and small, because it literally makes perfect sense. Oh, no. This is evolution. And to prove that, this team studied snot blobs. Well, bryozoans, which look like floating snot globs in the water, also growing as thin sheets on coral and piers. If you've been on a lake, you've likely played with these globs of snot with no idea what they actually are. Well, turns out these are actually made up of thousands of microscopic zooids, making each blob its own society or colony. So they studied fossil blobs, not bones. Somehow these blobs fossilized. I wonder how these blobs, with no bones and no structure, were buried fast enough, oxygen excluded fast enough so as to fossilize rather than just decay or get eaten. It's a mystery of evolution. Anyway, they studied fossilized blobs from 103 to 96 million years ago and found that in that very tiny 7 million year window, quote, some zooids in bryozoan colonies began to lose the ability to feed themselves, but they didn't die off. Instead, other members of the colony likely shared resources to keep those evolutionary oddballs alive. In the process, these new zooids were able to evolve a wide range of never-before-seen abilities. That's enough about the fossil zooids without them telling us how they know this. Look, this information is given on a need-to-know basis, and neither you nor I need to know, at least for now. So back to the modern zooids. What we find is that in blob colonies today, all the zooids look identically the same, except for the ones that don't. In fact, there are some with some appendages that work as like the military. They attack animals that get too close by, microscopically poking at them. There are also some that have the ability to crawl and kind of move the colony across the seafloor so they don't get buried by sand. And that's enough about them. So humans divide labor, but scientists don't know why. One theory posits that in early human societies, everyone did a little bit of everything, like people living off the grid. But then over time, some people became specialists in specific jobs, and that's enough about humans. So maybe animals also divided labor like humans and snotballs a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Not the galaxy part, but you get the idea. Back to now the 120 fossils of bryozoan colonies, and yes, I'm literally following the structure of their article here. They're jumping from thing to thing because, I don't know, I have no idea, but I'm sure it all makes sense to an evolutionary scientist, if only I was as smart as them. So 120 bryozoan fossils, they found that these little zooids started evolving the different type of zooids about 103 million years ago, but not like those we see today, even different ones. And apparently some of them even lost the ability to feed. All of this based on fossils, which fossils of snot blobs would have to be preserved perfectly, so that's why they look even more different. And how they determined they couldn't feed, sure, maybe they could determine that. I don't know. I'm not one of them. I'm not a scientist, but you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical on that. But this research team developed a bunch of mathematical models to determine how these guys survived, and then they ran their simulations. Quote, they mimicked how nutrients and other resources may have cycled through these ancient bryozoan colonies. How do you mimic something that you're only guessing how it might have worked? By definition, that's making things up. That's not mimicking. And you'll be shocked, but they found that these colonies could easily survive by using a division of labor, where some in the colony collected the food needed for the entire colony, even for the ones who no longer fed on the collected food. And I'm going to need you to not think about that last sentence too much. Quote, the researchers can't be sure whether other colony-forming animals, such as ants and bees, underwent similar evolutionary pathways. Simpson, one of the researchers, for his part recently teamed up with a group of archaeologists to study how the division of labor may have emerged in a completely different group of animals, humans. We get together and say, we can't believe we're studying the same problem, Simpson said. So there you go. The emergence and evolution of the division of labor in animals and humans, just like the headline said. Evolution! Now, your brain may be spinning from the absolute plethora, the treasure trove of scientific evidence I've been throwing at you. You may wonder if you can possibly take any more. You may be feeling dizzy, shortness of breath, numbness on your left side, pain in your jaw. Look, you need to go seek out some medical attention now, okay? But assuming your head's spinning from science, not a serious medical condition, we've still got more science to go. Hold on to your butts. Found on phys.org, headline, evolutionary anthropologist presents hypothesis about why humans are dominating the world over other animals. Now, if you're a gun-slinging, Bible-toting, flat earth-believing, anti-vaxxing, right-winging, sky-god-praying, religious nut, you may say that humans dominate the world because we were created by the aforementioned sky god as the preeminent creation, and per his edict, we were given dominion over all the earth, over the animals, the fish, and the birds. Now, for the rest of us who believe science, bazillions of years, evolving from pond scum and static to snot balls to clawed things to weird toenailed chimps to humans, true science, we want to know why we, silly humans, are dominating the world. And I and Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum would really like to know how we can just bring this domination to an end. I'm not sure that last bit is covered in this article. Just saying. Apparently, per the article, scientists have been struggling for centuries to figure out what exactly is so special about the human species. And amen, brother. But now, Thomas Morgan, an evolutionary anthropologist at Arizona State University, well, he has a new hypothesis that may just blow your mind. So put a helmet on or something. Scientist Morgan said that up to very recently, we just assumed, quote, it was the ability of human culture to accumulate and evolve that made us special. Oh, how silly we were. But no more. No. Now we have new information. Apparently what has been found, and what he's basing his new hypothesis on, is that animals pass along knowledge or something like humans do, right? So a new leafcutter ant will take a little bit of the fungus her mother has and go start a new colony. The humpback whale seems to build on the songs of the previous humpback whales, spread the songs around, and increase the complexity over time. Locusts can apparently evolve colonies, switching between green-colored, calm locust colonies and yellow and black swarming colonies. So see, animals have cultures, and they pass their culture to others, and they build upon those cultures. And this idea that animals pass along their learning and culture was something that was assumed to be uniquely human. Now look. Never really thought about the cultures, to be honest, of animals. But I mean, would anyone who's ever owned an animal argue that the parents or the more senior animals pass their knowledge to the younger? I mean, take whales. I don't know if they're singing or talking or whatever they're doing. Who knows? But would it surprise anyone that one generation of whales, by doing what they do, pass that along to the next generation, and that in each generation, changes could potentially be made to whatever it is they're doing, which then passes along to the next generation? Is there anyone out there who literally, logically thinks that in an animal group, every new animal has to start from ground zero? We see domesticated animals mix, like dogs with cats, where one takes on the traits of the other. I mean, of course they learn and pass down some things. The premise of the study and article is just kind of silly, to be honest. A lot of this stuff is silly. But let's see what Morgan and his team discovered anyway, since we're here. So their conclusion is that humans are open-ended, okay? That we possess the, quote, ability to communicate and understand an infinite number of possibilities in life. Morgan states, quote, the way that animals think about what they're doing constrains the way their cultures can evolve. One way might be that they can't imagine elaborate sequences very easily, or they can't imagine sub-goals. So he then goes into the idea that his goal is to make his kids breakfast. His sub-goals are getting the stuff he needs, mixing ingredients, cooking the ingredients, and then serving it to the children. Quote, each of these steps is a sub-goal, and these sub-goals have steps within them that I need to execute in the right order, so this whole thing is an elaborate procedure. The author elaborates further, quote, when it comes to the limit of this system, human brains just keep going. We are able to build and retain sequences of instructions that are deeply complicated, and this allows us to perform a near infinite set of behaviors. This is open-endedness. Animals, unlike humans, have limits to their endedness, which then halts their evolution. So Morgan and his team, after doing extensive experimentation, said the findings of their study, quote, concluded that the special thing about human culture is its open-endedness. It can accumulate, but then it never has to stop. It just keeps going. Evolution! So, they did a study, likely funded by university and or government grants, that concluded the reason humans and animals differ is because animals work like animals work and humans work like humans work. Again, this seems like almost like we were all designed the way we were designed and operate within our design as designed. If we humans evolved from animals and evolved open-endedness, why do we not see animals today evolving at various levels of open-endedness? I mean, shouldn't we see this in nature still, at least in varying and increasing degrees? Why don't we? And furthermore, how did we develop open-endedness if we're saying now that animals cannot develop open-endedness? Doesn't matter. And that, my friends, is our evolution roundup. Now, how convinced are you now that these scientists and professors have a very solid grasp on our past and our evolution and our future? Question, just a thought exercise here. If scientists, rather than claiming to perform science while discounting an entire well-developed, well-documented hypothesis as to why things are and operate the way they do, what if they included all legitimate hypotheses in order to see what actually fits the data better? Just today, on a Science Nerds Facebook page, someone, in their infinite wisdom, had a meme of, I think, the Knights of the Round Table, each one with their sword in hand, with the tip of the sword at the center of the table, with various ways to calculate or represent the number 4, such as one sword had the text 2 times 2, one had 2 squared, another one had 2 plus 2, etc., etc. One of the swords had a statement, quote, "The age kids of anti-vaxxers live to," or something like that. Now, I put in a comment about how this represented science today really well, where you have a lot of good science with some woke agenda-driven non-factual garbage science mixed in. Well, I had 2 different individuals comment back. The first one about how I'm not a scientist, and then he laughed. And the second one, how I'm a conspiracy nut, and he made up what I didn't say and then chided me for it. So I snarkily responded back, imagine that, requesting that since they're both superior scientists, just go ahead and prove your hypothesis that kids die by the age of 4 if they don't get the 75-ish vaccines now recommended by our government. Now, you would be shocked to know that neither of them responded. You'd also be shocked to know that that meme was either taken down by the individual who posted it, or it was removed by the admin. And I'm not going to take credit for getting the meme removed. I wasn't the only one who commented how stupid of a meme it was. But that's indicative of science today. You either toe the line, believe whatever you're told to believe, or you're shunned as not a scientist. With regard to evolution, however, evolutionary scientists are those who really aren't doing and refuse to do real science. They believe their theory, and they'll do all sorts of scientific gyrations within their theory. They'll write papers, and they'll have them peer-reviewed, which, as we've discussed in the past, means absolutely nothing, if not less than that. They'll make claims, promote discoveries, and so on, but they refuse to look at the well-developed and documented hypothesis of God. You know, God as designer, God as creator, God as rule maker, God as sustainer. If they did look at that, they'd see that all their theories would be much better answered by invoking biblical creation. Why do we have toenails? Because we were designed with toenails. Why? I don't know for sure, but I think some of these scientists said it best because of nerves and pressure points and balance and for protection of these little sausages as you find table legs and corners of walls in the dark, and maybe for trying to figure out why people are having sicknesses or illnesses or what's going on with them. Why do humans seem to have longer periods of childhood and growth than animals? Because God designed it that way from the beginning. And even though it's nowhere near what it was likely originally designed as, we do know that children need a longer period of time to learn and grow and mature than do animals. This is how we're designed. Why do we have division of labor, and why do we see it in seemingly everything? Well, because God's designs are perfect, and he incorporated that model in everything. One could even argue that God himself epitomizes that design in the Trinity, as each person of the Trinity is attributed certain roles. God is holy. He is the righteous judge, the Father of all. Jesus, our salvation, also the brother of all Christians, the Son of the Father. He's also the intercessor for us. The Holy Spirit is the helper, the advocate, our conscience, at least to some degree, and points us back to Jesus. And then, why do humans dominate the world? Well, because God designed us to dominate the world. We know this because God literally, specifically told us in his word, right there at the beginning, that we're to have dominion over the world. These scientists spend their entire lives spinning their wheels in the muck and mire of humanism. Nearly all of them will pass into the afterlife believing they're going to just blink out, lights off. But they'll instantly know that the entire theory they fought so hard to exclude is in fact the true truth they were trying to discover desperately their entire lives. Yeah, evolution is obviously a fascinating topic, at least for me, because in nearly all cases, it's so easy to see the answers for the questions they're struggling over, and they're just willingly ignorant. They're blind by their own choice because the implication of there actually being a God is too terrifying to them to even consider it to be true. Well, hopefully you found this as interesting as I did. We'll do another roundup in the future. You can bet your boots on that, although I'm not advocating gambling. That's just a saying. Quick, sit down, strap in, shut up, because here we go. Goal update number 10, 2024 edition. Sorry, I shouldn't have told you to shut up. So the odds are pretty good that I will not do a goals update in December, as that would fall just before Christmas. Not really sure right now, but I will do a goal wrap-up for 2024 and likely go through my new goals for 2025 in January. And can you believe we're in Thanksgiving week and a month from now is Christmas and a week after that is 2025? I mean, how is this possible? Okay, look, no point in dragging this out. Let's see what the heck I'm doing or not doing. So, starting with weight, as we always do. It's been slow going, but if you recall from the beginning of my mostly failure of a year, with regard to weight at least, my goal was to go nice and slow, rather than try to pound the weight off of myself and then overdo it and then, just have a total collapse. So in the last month, I've gone from 198.9 to 197.1. That's not overly impressive, I know. But if you knew what had been coming into work for donuts and free lunches, etc., plus my own weaknesses while at home, especially on the weekends, I'll take it. It's progress is progress. That gives me a loss this year, and really since the beginning of August, of 12.7 pounds, 17.1 to go, and got to try to get at least that much off by my older niece's wedding in March. Look, I'm not going to say she threatened me. Well, because she didn't. So if I said that, that would be a lie. Now, if you recall, I traded out my magical scale with an even more magical scale, which theoretically tracks things like fat and muscle, among a number of other parameters, even better because it shoots more beams of totally safe, non-cancer causing something or other through my body than the old magical scale did. And as such, the fat and muscle percentages were much higher than with the old scale. Accurate? No idea. Now, after 5 or 6 weeks of using it, I don't know, I guess it works. Just really have no idea. But I have numbers. So using the new values, I've gone from 28.6 to 27.2% body fat, which is just into the severely overweight section of the chart. And my muscle has gone from 66.6 to 67.9%, which is on the low end of standard, according to their chart. But even though those seem to be suboptimal, it also tells me that my fat-free body weight is excellent. So yeah, too much fat, but not counting the fat, I'm actually doing really good, even though the muscle is in the kind of the meh range. And it also calculates muscle mass, which is simply multiplying the weight by the muscle percentage, and it says that I'm well into the excellent range for muscle mass, which I'm not sure how I can be just barely standard and also excellent at the same time. Hey, but who am I to argue with the magical scale? All right, moving on to reading. As of Saturday morning, I had 4,256 pages read thus far this year. My goal is 4,500 pages for the year, so with about 5 weeks to go, I think I'll just make it. Probably be just a little bit over. Maybe. It's been an interesting mix this year. Some long-term books that have really spanned the entire year, just little by little. Booklets. It's probably the first year I've read a handful of booklets like I did. Political and religious books, that's pretty standard. And now, of course, I'm working on reading stuff that's online for my Thursday Reading with Dan episodes. Bottom line, the goal is going well for that one. Should be able to make it. Next, we have days in the Bible. Again, my goal was 5 days a week. Currently, I'm sitting at just under 100% of that goal, which is like 4.95 days per week. I can still hit 100%. It's possible. But if nothing else, I'm right there, right? And I think I've been learning a good amount. It's just just kind of slow going the way that I'm doing it, which, again, that's fine. It appears that I'm maybe a month behind my goal of the Bible in 2 years, so I may need to spend some additional focused time, but I'll evaluate that more really soon. Okay, as for Duolingo, I've still got my streak going. I'm practicing Italian. I'm also doing the math thing, which is really fairly easy right now and goes really quickly. And I'm doing the music thing a little bit here and there, which turns out I have zero musical talent and no idea how to keep tempo, apparently. Whatever. My goal was to get 70 minutes of practice per week. That's 10 minutes per day. For the year, I'm at 138.6% of my goal, which equates to like 97 minutes a week. And my streak, I believe, is sitting at 345 days as of right now. So that's pretty good. Closing in on a year, right? Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, well, sure, he can do 7 days a week on Duolingo, but he can't do 5 days a week reading in the Bible. And yeah, the reality is that 5 days a week in the Bible is reading at a minimum 100 minutes, but it's more like 180 minutes or more. I typically try to spend 30 minutes in the morning during the weekdays, and then it could be an hour or more on Saturday mornings. I mean, this last Saturday I spent about 2 hours reading the Bible and doing some other reading stuff as well, but just all kind of focused on that. And really, that's kind of what it's all about, right? It's time management and my lack of that ability, apparently. That is going to be a focus for my goals for 2025. Whether that's stated or it's implied within the goals, I'm not sure, but time management has got to be better. Anyway, that's a digression. Duolingo itself, that's good to go for the year. And finally, prayer. Yeah, so the biggest struggle of life, probably, I don't know. A big chunk of that struggle is, again, the time management part. I try to pray at night before I go to bed, but if things get all pushed out, then it gets too late, and then, well, I'm basically just falling asleep. So I'm going to be putting in some more thought into how I can address that next year and do it better. But my goal is the same as Bible reading, 5 days a week. As of right now, I'm sitting at about 79% of my goal, just under 4 days per week of focused, generally on my knees, unless they're hurting, working through my prayer list type prayer. Now, at best, I could end the year at just over 4 days per week on average. So look, I'm not pleased with that, but it's where I am. This is the first time I've actually tracked prayer as a focused goal. And this is obviously going to show up again in 2025. Okay, so that'll do it for this goal update, number 10 for the year, and probably the last one in 2024, but again, we'll see what kind of time I have as we get into December. Okay, so as always, if you have any questions, comments, ideas, tips, tricks, or whatever, let me know. Contact info, as always, in the episode notes. Keep on keeping on with your goals. We're almost at the end of the year, and then we can, make new ones and start this whole thing over again next year. Okay, bye. And with that, sadly, we've reached the end of yet another episode of the Logical Christian Podcast. I feel we've bonded as we've laughed and cried and twisted our faces in incredulity. If you've enjoyed or found value in what you've heard, go on and do all the podcast things. And don't forget to check the show notes for links and contact info. Lawrence J. Peters said, "Against logic there is no armor like ignorance." Jesus told us that if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So stay in the word, stay logical, stay faithful, and until next time, God bless.